what is up? We are back with season 2 of the podcast, Spiritual Roundtable, with myself, Child of Balance, and Miss Keys of Wisdom 369. And it's about to get turned up a couple notches this season. Buckle up. We're back to what we do best: devil's advocate, expansive thinking, highlighting triggers and laughter, and so much more. Join us as we embark on a journey of unlocking spiritual potential. As always, we promise to give you what you need and only sometimes what you want. Let's get going, B. All right. I just wanted to do a little bit of like a do you ever wonder? Because if you've ever had the pleasure of sneaking a creep inside my brain, I do a ton of wondering and questioning and just thinking, like objective thinking, without judging yourself. And it's really important. We talk about it all the time about not being afraid to ask a question or answer a question, because it's really important not only to understand where you come from, but it helps solidify your own foundations. Like, we've challenged so many things on this podcast, in our personal life, in our spiritual journeys and things like that. And sometimes, especially when you're working with a blended practice, you have to ask these questions because some things that are taught will contradict other structures and other ideologies and things like that. So sometimes asking some of the harder questions is really important. So we're just going to do a friendly thought baby episode where we're just going to throw out a bunch of, questions. Have you ever, and just see where it goes from there. So the first one that I have is kind of on old souls. So all the time we talk about old souls, right, dude? And I love the topic of old souls because you could go so many different places with it. Like, I feel like I'm geeking already. You can go so many different places with it. But the place that I find the most fun is when you go, okay, so if energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? Now, there's two ways you can go with that, right? It's that creation in itself is done. However, if you go that energy transmutes or transfers or transforms into other things, that means just like when we die, our soul continues on in another lifetime, in another form, in another shape, another person, another personality maybe, right? If you believe in reincarnation and things like that. And it's like, great. So if I'm saying that I can take, I don't know, a ball, pop the ball's dead, and all of a sudden the ball comes back and it could maybe be a bird. Like, okay, great. We're saying that the energy can move and create itself into different things. Fantastic. So then when I think about the idea of old souls, it's not necessarily that you've been here alive longer, right? Because energy cannot be created or destroyed. So that means we were all created at the same time, right? It just means that maybe you've just been a person longer. And I don't know how to make that make sense. Like, when you think about it, as far as when you see somebody and you're like, man, that's such an old soul. They feel like they have been here a long time. They're familiar with the human life, right? Maybe they had a lot of reincarnations in the human aspect of things.
I think you hear people like refer to kids that way sometimes. Do you know what I'm saying? When they're like, man, they're just like an old soul for their age. Like the way they see things, their wisdom, their lens. Like, you can just feel it in their energy that, I want to say they've done this before, because you can just feel it. I don't know any other way to say it. It's just a feeling.
Yeah, but then I think about it because it, like, if you're saying, and I know people who are spiritual who I wouldn't say are old souls.
Yes.
Which is even more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like, so old souls is not just people who are spiritual and believe in, another realm or energy or a soul, living on past the body, right? Like, so not everybody is called an old soul just because you're spiritual or you believe certain things. So then it gives me even more of a thought of being like, okay, but let's say that, I just think about it all the time, like, let's say that we just talk about me and you. Now, these are not facts, so anybody listening, do not think that these are concrete facts. But let's say this is Erin's second lifetime as a human. Newsflash, it's not. But let's just say it is. And it's my 10th or 20th time as a human. I'm going to seem like an old soul because I have been a human, living a human life so many times that I'm going to come with profound human wisdom. I'm going to come with a deeper understanding of humankind, human nature. I may know my way around things that may seem wiser beyond my years because I've had several lifetimes living here. But it's not actually that my soul is thousands of years older. What if Erin was a fucking fish in Atlanta? Like, you know what I'm saying? Or what if you were a fucking star baby for your other 20 years? You know what I mean?
Yep.
What happens if now I take my 20 years as a human and all of a sudden the next time I come back, I don't know, I'm fucking, a flower on planet Zion. Who fucking knows, Let's just say that I'm in the stars somewhere. Maybe I'm a guide. Who the fuck knows, right? And I don't have a human vessel. Just plant me whatever make believe, realm, district, whatever the fuck you want to plot me into. I'm just not a human, right? But let's say that's where Erin's soul's been predominantly. Its whole go around. It has chosen to come back as some Martian. You know what I mean? Like, okay, great. Well, in that situation, wouldn't then Erin be considered the old soul? Because she's lived that form, that lifetime so much that she would be housing the knowledge, the wisdom, the know-how from living that particular lifestyle, and that would be familiar, where I would be the newbie struggling, even though technically, as a human, I'm an old soul. I just think about that so many times. Like, what if an old soul's not just that I've been alive longer than you? No, it
Yeah.
just means that I've been in this familiar setting more times, or enough times to have gained some sort of foothold that at 13 with just one lifetime seems impossible to have gained. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. Because then that makes me think about like, I'm going to take that in a little bit different direction, but still with the like, have you ever wondered? You hear people talk about, like you just said, lifetimes, past lives, this and that. Yet I hear people talk about it at the same time while like, but this is the lifetime I'm gonna, like get out of here. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna get out of here this lifetime, or this or that, or this is when I figure it all out. But I hear people brag about their lifetimes in a way where they weave it into another construct where it's almost like you had a mission to come here, but you keep coming back. Did you not accomplish your mission? But then this time around in your human fucking ego, you're like, but I'm an old soul. I'm a this and that. I've been doing this for lifetimes, right? But then why are you still
Right?
here?
Like, is that a good
Right.
thing?
But then, like, why are you still here? Have you not figured it out? Like, and I'm not being an asshole because, like, this ties back into like esoteric knowledge and wisdom and this and that. You know what I mean? When you talk about like the wheel of samsara and then dharma and exiting your wheel and the karma and the this and the that. If you keep coming back, like, and this is why I said like this
Right?
word.
Because we assume that old soulness is a good thing. But what if it's actually not
But
a
that's what I'm
good
gonna say.
thing?
So people like wear this badge of honor, right? Like, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. You hear it more in New Age spirituality from an ego construct, like a superiority of like, I've been here doing this for lifetimes. I don't think that's a badge of honor. When I like actually stop and think about it. I'm like, so what you're telling me is I've done this more than once. I keep getting maybe a little bit farther. Maybe I don't. I don't. To each their own. I'm not going to tell anybody what their understanding is for themselves because I'm a firm believer in what your understanding is for your experience, and all of that is only needs to be understood by you. So I'm not coming for anybody. However, if the idea is to come here and learn and this and that, and then once we learn, like we don't come back in our human form, like you just said, right? You could be something else, or you could like not come back here altogether. Whatever.
Yeah.
Why nobody else asks that question? Like, are you wearing a badge of honor that's not really a badge of honor just because it gives you some kind of notoriety in your human form? And like and I'll just say it like toxic spirituality, because the idea is for you to come experience the way you need to experience. There's actually no right, no wrong. Like, you're giving all of your own shit meaning, and nobody else is doing it for you. If you adopt other people's meanings, that's on you. But your knowing and your experience is lived, it is expressed through you in real time. So, like, if the idea, even like, you can take it even further, take it into people who are really big into astrology. You have to finish this cycle and that, and the moon and Pluto and Saturn, and you got to do all the things, right? Before you can clear your karmic debt. Okay, so there we back are to like the wheel, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're back to it again, right? So you're having to experience and learn and integrate to exit that, right? So why
Right.
do we think that so many people say this is like a badge of honor, that they keep coming back and keep doing this? And then again, now this is like me, you know, my brain goes a million miles an hour when I start going, but have you ever thought? And then I go, and then the same people are, I've been doing this for lifetimes and we're here to save humanity. How many times did you fail?
You see, but that's just
And I don't believe we
I
need to be
don't know
saved.
how I feel about the save humanity thing.
I
Like,
don't believe that. I
when
just
it
don't find
comes
it.
to the whole rising up of like some collective, because I just feel like if, depending on what you believe, if God, spirit, creator, whatever, made the universe, right, and everything in it, why would he need us to raise the planet, or why would it or they or, whatever, need us to raise the planet? Couldn't they just snap their fingers and raise the planet if that's what they wanted to do?
Uh-huh.
Like, I guess I just don't understand.
Well, like, that's where my mind goes. Like, when I sit, right? When I actually sit, when I meditate, when I just do what I do, when I just do my own thing, right? It's, we come to learn what we need to learn, experience what we need to experience, and then, like you said in the beginning, energy isn't created or nor destroyed; it's transformed. It changes. We go somewhere else, wherever that somewhere else is, however that somewhere else or something else manifests. We just go somewhere else when we've learned what we've needed to learn in this experience. But then people make that so big and they forget to bring it, like, scale it back down, right? So if you take it to this bigger scale, I just don't understand why it's so hard on our human scale, right? Where people then continue to repeat their humanness patterns, right? I don't prefer this. I don't prefer that. But you're saying you have all this knowledge and this wisdom that's going to ascend, facilitate, move you, transform you, alchemize you, give you a new experience. But you can't figure out what's right in front of you.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think about it all the time, you know?
But you're right. Like, God, source, creator, spirit, universe, field, whatever you want to call it as, we are one with it. Even when you take it in different constructs, right? And you say a child of God. Okay, so you're a part of God. You're a part of God. If you're a child of God, you're a part of God. If you go full blown, like quantum physics, you're a particle of God, right? Like, you can take it any way you want, whatever fits your understanding, your belief, your knowing, however you want to categorize that. But like
Right.
you said, it could be changed in the snap of a finger. It could be changed in the snap of a finger.
Right. And then I always have that question and being like, because you just said snapping the finger, and it just made me think, like, so I feel like, and I don't necessarily know that I have a black or white view of this. So, like, take that for what it's worth. I always have a growing, definition, or a working definition. But it's like, so do we believe in a divine plan and destiny, or are you in control of everything? And I'm not
Correct.
just talking about free will. I'm talking about, like, do you manifest everything for yourself? Are you the creator of your own life? Are you the thing that brings about your changes, your energy, or this? Or do you follow some sort of destiny or some kind of divinely led something?
Right.
Because I feel like that matters, especially when you're
I do
talking
feel
about
like
that,
that. Correct.
especially when you're saying, like, we're raising the planet. Well, okay, that if we are, then does that mean that whatever you believe to be some kind of God, source, spirit, creator, universe is so hands off that they're not guiding, that they're not, involved in that way. So then do you then have a divine plan and a destiny, or are we just struggle busting it till we get it right? And who decides what right is?
But like, are you the creator? Do you have a destiny? Or
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So it just comes down to me really that kind of idea is like, but then which one are we working with? Now I'm
But
not
I
saying
think
it
you're
can't be
right.
some kind of bastard version of both. I'm just saying, like, because he can't be so hands off that he's not assisting in raising the planet. And I'm just going to use he because it's easier for me to talk. Like, guys,
Right. No, I
you
got you.
insert whatever word you want. I'm just going to use he because it's easier for me to talk. But like that, spirit isn't assisting the planet in that way, or the people in that way. But they're hands on so much that then they're guiding you and you have a destiny and something you're supposed to do. It's just weird. I think it's a little fucked up to be like, they're gonna guide the people, but not just fix the problem. Does that
Yes,
like,
but like
I
not
don't
only
know,
that,
like,
like
just
what you
my
said is like
brain
really
goes,
wrong
like,
in my
my
heart.
brain literally goes, so we're going to help the people, but not fix, like, it just seems like, I don't know, like, I don't know. It's just
It's
weird. And
really
like, maybe
fucked
maybe
up.
that's the point. Maybe it's just the humanness in me that's like, that doesn't make any sense. And I understand that we don't have all the answers being human, our brains and things like that, our understanding are limited. But it just seems kind of weird. And maybe, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird, like kind of cutting corners.
I agree with you in the sense of like, but it does matter. It does matter when you're like, if you think that you're the you know what I mean? Are you the creator? Are you this? Can you, like you said, can you manifest? First of all, we've always been manifesting. That's just a thing. We talked about that last week. Manifesting resonance, frequency, like all that good stuff. But my thing goes, so you're the, you hear people go, well, we're the creator, we create, we this, we that. Okay, super. But then in the same breath, you're waiting for your abundance. You're waiting for your manifestations. You're waiting, you're asking for permission. You're doing this, this, and this. You have to achieve this before you can have this. And it's just this, who are we asking permission? I don't understand. And again, that might be just like you said, that might be my humanness. But I'm like, regardless of what any of us have ever thought we've had to be doing, here we are still being. Here we are. Like, that's the facts. Like, we right here in this right now moment, doing whatever it is that we're doing. Whoever you are, whatever you are, to each their own. We right here. So like, what are we asking permission for? I don't understand. Because we don't need permission to exist. We don't need permission to be. We're already the proof of that. We're already proving that to ourselves every day. We've proven to ourselves how many times that we have the ability, no matter what you call it, what construct you play in, we have the ability to change our life at any moment. We have the ability to shift something. We have the ability to chart a new path. And even take it more simplistic. You can go quit your job tomorrow and go get another one and start a whole new trajectory for yourself. You can break up with Timmy or Johnny or Susie or whoever and start a whole new life, right? Like, we're always the proof that we can change anything. But then there's people waiting around for some kind of profound change to happen. And my mind goes, but what are you waiting for? Who are you asking to decide you're good enough? You're ready. You've done enough to have this now.
Yeah. So that was just one of my I wonders. You know what I mean? As far as the old soul goes. Because I feel like so much these terms and things like that are used, and then they get taken out of the original context, and they get borrowed, like a borrowed definition or a borrowed word. And then we kind of just get really far away from
Yes.
how it was originally intended. But
Yeah.
then when you do some sort of a blended practice, which newsflash, 90% of the people on this planet have some kind of blended practice going on, even if you're in
That's where
religion.
I'm gonna go with my little question in my head that I like unraveled a long time ago.
Like even yeah, like even if you're in some kind of religion, a lot of times because you're not following the scripture to a T, maybe you're following your church or maybe you're following your own understanding of it or like it's still slightly different. It's still slightly unique. It's still like, you know what I mean? Now, I do think that there are people who are like to the letter of the law, whatever they believe their law to be. But it is really interesting. So I just think like how much of that is kind of not as it's intended or been misinterpreted. I can't
Yeah.
especially when I come back to scriptures, like I think about that all the time. I'd be like, how much of this is just like a bad translation?
Yes.
Like, or this is a literal translation? Because if you've ever translated from one language into another, you will know that there's a difference between a like perceived translation and then like a literal translation.
Yes.
And sometimes the literal is not what's actually being meant when they use a certain phrase or a certain jumble of words
Yes.
together. And I
Yes.
know that just from like taking years of German, like
Correct.
especially when it comes to written text, you can go word by word and miss what is actually trying to be conveyed because
Because
that
you're
word
using
either
a
has,
modern day meaning.
yeah, but it's like that word either has multiple meanings and depending on how it's used, or quite literally, when you use a series of words together, it creates a slang phrase that has a different definition than each word separately. So I always wonder like how much has that been just like genuine. I'm not talking about people like I'm not talking about the passages that like kings have like, purposely and nations have purposely cut out or changed or doctored to push an agenda. I'm talking about the ones that are just like, oops, we didn't know Sanskrit, or like, oops, we weren't as good in this, you know what I mean? And we were limited because of the time it was originally translated. Maybe, we didn't have. Now, a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a one stop shop for all things spiritual, check out the website www.childofbalance.com. We opened up a Get 5, Give 5 program, and it's all for referring friends and family. We know you guys do it. We want to say thank you because we are always seeing you send your trusted people our way. So visit the website and figure out how you can not only get $5 for doing it, but give $5 to your bestie. Visit www.childofbalance.com. There's no end date. So if you want a one-stop shop for private spaces, spiritual guidance and assistance, mediumship, mentorship, private readings, shadow work assistance, it's all there. If you are looking for a free tree of knowledge where you can learn esoteric wisdoms, breath work, you can learn about yourself, cultures, spiritual hygiene, spiritual practices, spiritual traditions, and you can just learn about almost anything under the sun spiritual for 100% free, check out the website. And you should become a member. If you're not already a member, www.childofbalance.com. It's 100% free. It'll never cost you money. We would never charge you money. The website is about assistance and community. Take advantage of it, fam. It's a great place to go to unlock your spiritual potential. www.childofbalance.com. Access to all the things that we have now, or whatever you want to say, like, we were limited by the translator, who knows? But I wonder all the time, like, what that would be like to sit down with some people who had written these texts or lived in the time of these texts to be like, is this a literal passage, or are we being
We're
a
being
little like,
allegorical here. Right.
yeah, like, are we
Right.
being allegorical, or are we being metaphorical, or like, is this
Yeah.
kind of being like one of those, hyperbole? We're kind of exaggerating, the whole boat wasn't full of fishes. They had like 12. You know what I mean? Like, I like what, like, I wonder all these
Water the
questions, like,
wine.
like how much of things were like accurate, you know, like not only just historically accurate, but
Yes.
like it's I read this book one time and it's so silly, but I read this book one time about like the bloodline of Jesus Christ and I have it. I have it in my shelf. It's so interesting. But it comes at it from like a history aspect and not like a religion aspect.
Yeah.
So it's like just a historical person. I forget what the word is, like whatever that job is, a career is when you're like uncover historical not only artifacts, but you weave together like missing pieces of history and whatever. Anyway, so it was like this guy wrote this book, and I'm pretty sure it's called The Bloodline of the Holy Grail or something weird like that. And it's just really interesting because they were talking about like how, you know, even something as simple as like the Virgin Mary, like, and they're like, well, technically back in the day, you know, a woman was considered a virgin even if she wasn't a virgin after this certain period. And before marriage, their first X amount of winters were still considered a virgin, even if they actually weren't an intact virgin. It was like so wild that I was like, oh, and I'm not saying that it was, you know, hard facts and you had to believe it that way. I'm just saying it was interesting to be like, oh, but that word, just because we know it to be that now, what it means nowadays doesn't mean that that word actually meant what it did back then. And I know you do that all the time with like etymology and the roots of words, but it's like shit like that is just so interesting. So I've always had that question. Like, I wonder if I could like sit, like, have you ever watched that movie? What was it, like the Interview with God or whatever? And it was like they like sat down and they were like playing chess with like God or
Yeah.
whatever. And it was
Yes.
like this whole like conversation. Like I would love to, and I'm not talking about with abilities, guys. Like I get it, you could talk to your spirits or whatever, but I mean, like I would like to have like this like conversation with somebody who either wrote the scripture, like give me Peter, or like fucking John, or you know what I mean. Like give me somebody, you know, Luke. Let's do this. Like, and I would love to just be like, okay,
Let's do this.
you know what I mean? Like I would love to just be like, all right, like now I see that you wrote that you ran faster than Peter. Like, what happened there? You know, why was Peter last? Like, I like would love to get all that shit. Like, now, you know, fucking Matthew, I know that you wrote a whole lot more than you put in this book. So, what were some of the passages you were like, oh, we don't really need that? Like, I want those passages. Like, there are some shit that I'm like, did you know that when you wrote this down that this was gonna be like people were gonna hang on your word? And I've thought about that too, like not necessarily with the Bible, but with like Egyptian like texts or like even some kind of like Greek texts, like a Roman text. Like I've wondered that just in general. Like, and I know that back in the day, paper was expensive. It was sought after. You know, even when you were chiseling into stone, it took hours. So a lot of people weren't doing it frivolously. It's not like I could open my laptop and be like, boo boo doo. But what happens if we found something? Now, I used to think about this when I was little. Like, what happens if we found something and we're like, oh my God, this is the story of the goddess. And it's actually, you know, Magnus's like fourth grade little imagination station story that they
Hey,
decided to like write on the cave wall. Or I'm sorry, because how many times now I just think about this as like when I was a kid, I wrote help on everything. I wrote help on everything. I put
yeah.
handprints on windows. I wrote blah 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 was here. Like we carved initials in everything. We like, and then I just think about like, yeah, times have changed, but like people stay the same. You know what I mean? There are certain things that you can guarantee humans to do: eat, sleep, reproduce, and fear death, right? And then fuck around is the fifth one. So it's like if you can, like, if you can rely on people to do those things, like eat, sleep, reproduce, like you know what I'm saying? Like I just think about all the times like kids still had to be kids. I don't care if at like 12 they were grown and they were married at that time. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
At some point they were still kids. At some point there were still people in society who were barely making it and they weren't living these lavish lifestyles. Like you know what I mean? It's like, and I just think about this all the time. Like, how many times do we find something and we're like, oh my God, this must be, and then come to find out it's like not that at all. And like, oops. Like, we just found someone's random pot. It wasn't Queen, Victoria's, I don't know, commode. You know what I mean? Like, just like weird stuff. I always wonder like how much we're just off base. And I always wonder if like, because my brain does the weird shit. So I always wonder if we're like discovering things, rediscovering things. And then like people's spirits are like watching us and they're like, oh my God, these idiots. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, I think about that all the time. Like when they just find us, they're like, oh, I wonder if this must be from ancient times. And they're like, and like blowing on it and like wiping it off, and archaeologists with little brushes. And then I wonder if like disembodied spirits are like, no, that's not what it is. It's not, I think it's something special. It's our chamber pot. Like, put it back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how many times like we go, oh my God, this must be. And then they're like, that's not what it was used for at all. Like, not even close. Like, I wonder so much to get like, if we just get watched like that,
Like, but that's it. Like all the things we think we discover that aren't really air quotes, that we discover aren't really discoveries, because like clearly they were here. This is not brand new information. It's brand new to an individual. It might be brand new to a civilization. However, the proof is that it was here. So like, it's not new.
I know. And I always think about like the land, so like let's think about, I don't know, like it's like especially Greek and Roman, like I always think about that, like they're always digging in like ancient, preserved stuff. They're always digging in the ground, and then they find these like elaborate mosaic tiles or like brick laid like 7 feet below. And I'm like, I understand that the world changes and water washes away and things shift, but at the same time, I'm like, if I just spent hours, days, months with primitive tools. Now, whether you want to believe aliens do shit or not, that's up to you. But I mean, like the average person, like primitive tools, like, you know what I mean? Because like we'll leave all doors open, like I'm not talking about the pyramids here. I'm talking about like somebody had done a design in their home, you know.
Yeah.
And people find these like ornate, like, I mean, how like land structures that, go down,
Yeah.
and there's mosaic tile on the floor, and there's brick laid this, and the walls are stone and made of mud and lumber and like all this crazy ass shit. And I'm like, and then it just got like filled in, buried. I'm like, where were the people? Where were the people who were like, we need to keep this like clear up? Like, it's so wild to me how many things just get lost in our ground, like, and they're fully intact, like it's just completely mind-boggling. And I understand that, like, sometimes civilizations will get taken over and then old things will be demolished, and I'm not saying that that didn't happen, but I'm just saying that sometimes they're like, oh, we like, what is it, like is it Persia? There's something that like they lost, like the like, what was it, Persian mountains or the Persian pyramid, they lost it like 4 times because they let it get overgrown. And then people were rediscovering the same pyramid, like when they were like like exploring the wilderness. They're like, oh my God, I think I'm on the summit. Like, and it's just weird as shit. And then they clear it all back and they're like, oh yeah, there was a whole ass pyramid here the whole time. Who made that decision? Like, I just think about that all the time. I'm like, you spent so much time building that. Like, what? I
Well,
don't
and
know.
then you know my brain just be like all the time, but who told you? Like, but who told you? I do that all the time, like about everything. Whether it's even when I read books, because we be loving our books, but I'll do that. I'm like, so who decided that this was this land, or who decided? I seriously, like, I think about this, like, who decided this, and then we just blindly accept it. How much of our existence has just been blind acceptance? Just blind acceptance without questioning it. Because then we're all sitting here now, right? Like you hear people go, "Oh my God, we've been lied to about everything," or blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, so like, how much of our lives have we all just lived in blind acceptance?
I wonder but I do have to say, I don't think it started as blind acceptance. Because I think a lot of things were very violent, and it was very much, this is it, or we're just gonna kill you. Like, like I do think back to like really, really old times to where things changed because things were taken over, they were conquered, and then they were wiped out. And then it
Yeah,
was pretty much like, you do it our way, or you just
right.
don't, you're just don't exist here.
Right.
Like, so I think about that, but I mean, like nowadays, yeah, because I think it's just one of those things that have been passed on. One of the worst things that I feel like anybody could say is like, "Oh, well, it's always been this way," and it's just because there's no actual reasoning behind, And it's one thing if it's like tradition, it keeps the culture alive, like that's a reason, great. But when you're like, it's just cause, that's not really a reason. And do you know why
Um,
it is? Do
yeah,
you know
I
when that
grew up, there
started?
used to be a reason all the time because I used to always ask questions. I'm sure that's shocking. But like I always used to ask questions. Well, just because. I remember that being the answer. Just because. When nobody could answer my question, it was always just because. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I
Well, I think that's an ego thing. I think that's an ego thing because nobody likes to be made to look stupid. And that's like their own internal thing of like, if I don't have this answer, then I look stupid. So then it's
but
just like,
I mean it in
damn
the
it,
sense
listen
of
to
like
me,
I mean it in the sense of like if my parents would like specifically my mom would like ask us something and our answer was just because, she'd be like, that is not an answer. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
You need to give a reason and answer the question, right? But then, like, as I grew up, I would just be inquisitive, like that thirst to understand or look at things differently or whatever you want to call it. And then the answer would always just be, well, just because, which then led me to realize people don't really have the answers. Just so many questions.
I don't think half the world has answers
I don't
for hardly half of the things that
I
people
don't
have questions about.
And then my mind goes, so we probably didn't need the answers to them anyway.
But I also think that a lot of people get comfortable with close enough.
Yes,
Like, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, because I do think, questioning can become toxic to a certain point because you do anything too much and it can have, crazy effects because you're just way out of balance and way out of whack. But close enough, I feel like can be dangerous by itself because then you stop at an unsatisfactory level. Does
correct.
that make sense? Because
Well,
what's
because
close enough?
close
And
enough,
that's so dependent on the person though.
correct. Because just my 2 cents.
Like, it's close enough majority, it's close enough 90%, it's close enough 40%. And how do you know what close enough is if you don't know what 100% is? So what
Correct.
if we think close enough is 30%? Or because we think 30 is 90, but it's really only 30. Like,
Yep.
and that's just where it's just, I don't know. And I understand that, we probably lost half the people listening, but it's just one of those things, like, you gotta understand, like, this is legitimately what we do,
Yes.
like, by ourselves, but then we also do it together. And we do this on every single topic because it's
Yes.
really important to question your shit. And the
Correct.
things that you have questions for aren't silly. They aren't stupid.
And the thing,
How many
I
times do
think
we tell
for
people to
me,
ask their question?
if you can't question it or challenge it and you get offended if someone else does, that's like a starting point for you. Because, like I said, I enjoy seeing, and I mean this, like, I actually enjoy seeing how there's so many different things that can have a similar meaning. You know what I'm saying? Like, where there's parallels in different ways. Where I'm like, oh, that's super cool. Is where other people get pissed and they're like, but it's only this way. Like, it can only be this way because I built my entire identity in life and perspective around only this way. And I'm always like, oh, cool. Like, there's another one. Like, and I don't want to call them, and I'm not calling them rabbit holes because that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm literally trying to say, like, perspectives. Like when I realized, I'll use the Bible because it's just a fun one. And sometimes it's one that irks people, but it's a good one to go. This can be read different ways. First of all, there's multiple versions of the Bible. So let's just start there. But it can be read in a literal sense, if that's your lens. It can be read in an allegorical sense, if that's your lens. It can be read in multiple ways, right? And I'm not saying anybody's way is wrong, because to each their own. But I just think when you shift and look through them all, it's so interesting, and it leads to such a different understanding. And different isn't good or bad. And I think that so many people get that connotation, that ego of, well, if it's different, it's bad. If it's this, it's not this. If it, all that shit. But if you can't even look at it from a different lens without getting pissy or mad or offended, that's on you. There's so much out there and so many lenses and ways to see things that just expand your own energy, expand how you experience. If you can't challenge, you wild.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So if the universe is always in reciprocal alignment with you, because it always gives you what you are, so therefore it's always mirroring or
Yeah.
echoing back to you, rippling back to you
Yeah.
exactly what you are: good, bad, positive, negative, dense, light, happy, sad, whatever.
Yeah.
Are you ever not where you should be?
Oh, you're always where you should be. That's the difference. You are always where you should be. Because, my knowing is that there's no coincidences. And the thing is,
So then if that's the case, does destiny exist? Because if the trenches, if you feel like you're in the trenches and that is being mirrored back to you, right? Chaos, drama, whatever, the struggle bus energy, the having to push through it because that's being given to you because that's what you're emanating at that moment. And that's where you should be, because in a way that's your alignment. And a lot of people, they don't realize that they're striving for alignment when they actually are already in alignment. They're just trying to change their alignment. They want to align with something else, but it's not that they're in a misalignment. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that they're in a misalignment. So it's like, in that case, does that whole idea of I'm not where I should be somewhere else, does that even apply then?
nope. Because for me, it's like this. If you're just going to talk energy, right? If we're just going to talk energy, and it's mirrored back to you, it's rippled back to you, whatever alignment you're in the alignment. That's where you resonate. That's your frequency. You're getting it back. The field, you know what I mean? Energy, the universe, whatever, didn't give meaning to the energy and go, we're going to give you some bullshit. We're going to give you some drama. We're going to give you some gossip. Energy is that frequency, right? So it's just giving you that same energy back. The meaning that you assign to it is yours. But somehow people are taking energy, and I know we talked about this before, in deciding that it is deciding what is good and bad. You're deciding if it's good or bad. Your humanness is categorizing your alignment, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. You are categorizing it as good or bad. You are giving it the meaning. If you prefer it, if you don't, if you want something different, if you don't. It's you. It's responding to you. You're not in a misalignment. You just don't like it. That's not the same thing.
Like, well, then I get to thinking, like, but then everybody starts talking about, they're not where they should be, or I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be. Yeah.
You know what I'm
But
saying?
then
They
that
don't
just
like where
leads
they're at.
to, but that leads to almost having you infer that where they're at is a mistake. But if it's in alignment with you, where's the error?
They're not.
And then it's like, but then if everything is purposeful and there are no coincidences, are there mistakes?
No,
And if there are no mistakes, then there are no accidents.
no.
I was just curious.
I
I was
mean,
just curious because how many times do we see that, or do we have people
yeah,
asking questions because they feel like they're stuck or they're not where they should be, or I'm, I'm misaligned, or I'm not over here and I want to be here, and this is a mistake. I can't tell you how many people tell me this is a mistake, I shouldn't be here. I can't tell you how many people tell me that with where they feel like their life should be versus where they're currently witnessing their reality, their life, their whatever to still be.
but when you think about that, like I mean, we've talked about it like energetically, but that's somebody mentally wanting something different while not resetting that nervous system, while not giving themselves new experiences. They think that if they do something, they will achieve the permission to change something. When it just goes back to the like, but you can tune into something else anytime you want. And no, I don't think there's mistakes. Just in my own experience, I'm only going to speak for myself. I have had experiences that I wouldn't wish on anybody. I don't. I don't wish them on anybody. I don't wish anybody to go through that. I don't think they're an accident. I don't look at those and go, no, that was just a mistake, or that was just an accident. I have been asked that question before. If I could go back and do something over again, would I do it differently? No. Seeing where I am right now, who I am right now, if I could go back and do something differently, I wouldn't be who I am right now. But the difference is, I like who I am. I'm good with me. I see the purpose in all of it from where I'm at now. We always say hindsight's always going to be 2020. But that's the thing. Most people who don't like who they are in the now wish to go back and rewrite and redo and have another chance, right? Not realizing whatever you went through gave you experience and it gave you wisdom. But if you're so busy shaming it and regretting it and judging it, you're never integrating the wisdom, which is what got you to where you are right now. I don't believe there's mistakes. I do believe that everything is purposeful. I don't think that there's coincidences. And this is just based on my experience and the understanding I have now, because I can see, and I don't mean see with my eyes, I mean like the seeing. Like I can see how things are intricately woven together. I can see how no path isn't purposeful, no intersection, no interaction. Like even in the time, if it's like I didn't prefer that, but like it led to something else, and I'm like, well, if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't have met this person because this was a common denominator, and then this unfolded and this happened and this made a great experience. But if this had never happened, then none of this would have.
Yeah, that chain effect, that domino effect. Yep. And I think about that, like, and I feel like sometimes when people think about it really largely, like on a big scale, like, well, if I never met that person and how everything would change. But like, we can take it really small because I always think about, 9/11 and
Yeah.
how when they took survivor accounts, the things that made people late to the office were the most random things. Now, a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a one-stop shop for all things spiritual, check out the website www.childofbalance.com. For those of you who truly appreciate handmade products, we have a handmade shop. Everything is made to order, blessed, saged, and sent out as quick as possible. We have anything from handmade sounds for meditation to herbal blends like bath teas and dump and go specials to road opener mixes
to kits and oils, and so much more. For those of you who enjoy taking spiritual classes and courses, but maybe can't fit it into your busy schedule, we have self-study courses, and everything can be found in the Handmade shop. The website is about assistance and community. Take advantage of it, fam. It's a great place to go to unlock your spiritual potential. www.childofbalance.com.
Like, my phone rang as I was heading out the door. I spilled
Really
coffee
did
on
something to
myself.
somebody and they had to change their clothes. Someone
Yeah.
stopped to get a Band-Aid because they wore new shoes to work that day and got a blister, so they stopped and got a Band-Aid. That's an excellent example. You would never do that on any, not never, but like to date, for that person, that wasn't a regular part of their schedule. They were like, no, I'm going to go here, and not thinking anything of it. And like
And
I said,
especially, like, the things that
choice.
are perceived accidents or mistakes, like spilling coffee, or someone had a
Yeah,
flat bike tire. Like, and the things that you would be like, "Oh, Jesus, like, why, why did this have to happen to me?" And then all of a sudden, you know, one of the worst terrorist attacks and the towers get hit, and you're lucky you weren't in that tower. Like, and there's just shit like that that it's just like, okay, so was that just happenstance? And I know our answers, but like, just for the people listening, like, was that just happenstance? Was that a coincidence? Do you still believe in coincidences? Or do you believe that everything happens for a reason, even if we can't see it in the moment?
correct.
Or it has a domino effect that, that one thing changes everything, you know? And I think about that so much. And I know we've had this conversation because this is always a topic for me, but that's why I actually hate predicting the future. And like, don't
Oh,
get me wrong, like, I am given premonitions about things. I can't control the premonitions I'm given, to my knowledge. Like, and I don't ask for them. They just happen. But I think about that a lot of times, especially when we're on live or people come for like an intuitive read, especially if we happen to be having cards or something like that. Everyone wants to know a timeline. And the only thing, not the only, but one of the things that I dislike about that is one thing, because of the domino effect and how everything is interconnected, has the potential to change everything. So,
yes,
what happens if right now, in the present moment, the current predicted timeline, that you are currently sitting at in your resonance, in your energy, because you're the one getting the reading? What happens if that timeline predicts a massive switch in 3 months from now? Let's do the love thing. You meet the love of your life three months from now. Great. Well, what happens if the love of your life drags their feet and they don't break up with the person they're dating when they originally thought in their mind they would, because something happened in that person's life and maybe it wasn't a good time and they were feeling a lot of pressure. They didn't want to make it worse. So they waited an extra month to break up with them. Well, now it's not happening in 3 months because they're delayed a month. But then also, what happens if, because you knew something was coming, you start changing your operating pattern? Everybody has an operating pattern, and
yeah,
it is so small and so minute of the little things that you do throughout the day with a seemingly random rhythm, but it's not random. It's actually very calculated into the being of who you are.
correct.
What if that changes? And because that changes, it has a domino effect and it just sends a little ripple that shifts the timeline for things, because now you know something's coming. So not only you are anticipating it, but maybe you're changing your daily routine. Maybe someone told you that you're going to bump into them in a coffee shop. So instead of heading to the coffee shop every Tuesday, you start heading to the coffee shop every fucking day.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Or they said that, when you go on a train ride, you never take a train ride. So what do you start doing? You start looking to plan a train ride. And you start doing all these things that are not typical for you, or you're going to bump into them in a taxi. I'm not in the city. I don't take a taxi. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things, like, sometimes, even though, people crave the details. So what if just the awareness of knowing something that you were previously unaware of that would have seemed like happenstance, because you change your small, minute patterns, it changes the timeline or the perceived, outcome and when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, or, and I think about that all the time, and I'm like, but why would we want to put ourselves through that? Why would we want to put ourselves through this massive anticipation game if one little thing has the potential to change everything because it's all connected? If I can spill coffee on myself and potentially miss my death date from 9/11, I mean, like, think about how crazy that is to be that survivor, that person who tripped coming out of their stairs and spilled coffee all over them and had to go back and change and was 5 minutes late to work. Like, and then think about what that would be like. Now put that, example in the average person without, the catastrophic life and death moment that just occurred, and put it just randomly on like a Wednesday.
Correct.
And just think about how much shit that could change.
Correct.
I think about that show all the time, and I'm like, so why do you want to know? I
But
know
not
it's
only
our
that,
impatience and
the
our
timeline's not
excitement and
separate from you. And you've just proven that in what you just said. The timeline's not separate from you. Because the second you make a different decision, you have created a different ripple. And the thing is, what if you change your mind? Pause right there. What if you decide what you wanted 6 months ago isn't what you want anymore? Are you bound by what you said 6 months ago? You can't change your mind? You can't change your mind.
I
And I'll
think
give
about
like
that all the time.
a basic example, like basic example. I want to think like, okay, let's say you went to school and you got your degree in, I don't know, teaching. I'm just gonna pick something off teaching, and then you just decide I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go make candles. I want to go do something else. Right?
Yep.
You've shifted your entire timeline. You have
Yeah.
put something down that you said was your path. This is my path. This is my purpose. This is my this. You shifted a timeline and you didn't ripple it. You made a whole new one because you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But if somebody told you, well, you're going to meet, like you said, you're going to meet this person at this time doing this thing and this thing, but then I'm just going to call it your soul pulls you in another direction. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because you're not really into the teaching thing anymore. You want to do this over here. Like this lights up your soul. But then you're not going to meet this person. That person's meant to meet you. You go meet him when you meet him.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll meet him in a school playground. Maybe you'll meet him at a place you sell your candles that has to do with school. You never know. But you've now made it this narrow track mind that it has to be a certain way. We always say nothing that's for you is ever going to miss you. Ever in your life.
Because it
Ever.
either aligns with you or it doesn't. And if it aligns with you, it's being sent towards you. It's being rippled back to you. It's being echoed. It's being, you're getting it reflected back to you. So if it's meant to be yours, aka it aligns with you right now,
Yes.
it's in your alignment, then you will receive it.
Correct.
And I think about that shit all the time,
Yes. But
like
that's
there's
the thing.
just so many things that I think about. And I love the time analogy. And I even think about this, like we were just talking about this before we started podcast, but I even think about it as much as, I feel like hindsight's 2020, and we always think that we would do something, especially when we hear somebody else doing something. Well, I would never have done that, right? Or I wouldn't have, like, and we're just straight to judge, hard as shit. But sometimes we take our present day knowledge and we go, well, I wouldn't. Okay, but you didn't know what you knew today back then in that situation. So would you have chosen the same thing? And we were talking about this because I asked you before we started podcast, because this is how this started, by the way, guys. I was like, what do you think about this? And then we had this whole ass conversation. I was like, we should just do this for podcast. But this was the whole thing, was I was like, what if the Bible was literal? Now, and I'm not saying that you have to believe in the Bible, but this was just my what if. It was like, what if the Bible is literal? And what if Jesus was literally God's only begotten son, came down, physically did miracles, healing, and was here to save the planet? Now, let's say you were like villager number 1 during the time of Jesus. Would you have gotten on board? Or would you have been like, blasphemy, I can't change, my mind's not open enough? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
and then what happens if we change the like details a little bit? What if it wasn't my only begotten son? What if it was my only begotten daughter? So now let's take them and put them way in a position of, you know, what do you call that? Not dominating. So like almost subservient to where at that time period women were beneath men. You know what I mean? They were not seen like they are today. They didn't have their voice. They didn't have their power. The idea that Jesus had female disciples was mind blowing, right? The idea that he talked with Mary Magdalene as much as he did was mind blowing. You know, the idea that he allowed her to like be in on sermons and listen and read and write, like mind blowing, right? So like now you think about it, and then kind of like I think about that all the time. Be like, well, nowadays, right, with the Bible and religion, and you know, it's been talked about for ages and ages and ages. Of course, you'd be like, I would be right there, and my man Jesus. Okay, but then I think about that all the time. But like, would you have though? Would you have though? If knowing that you're like, because at that time it was very religious. So it's like knowing that your soul is on the line. You could be shunned from everything. You could be put to death. Would you be like, that's my savior? Like, or would you be like, swerve, blasphemy? I could never. And because it's interesting to kind of see like, who would you really be? Would you really be, you know, ride or die down for it? Or would you be like, I don't know, that's radically different than everything I've been taught. I don't know if I can do it. You know what I mean? And then think about that. Like now let's take him out of a masculine role where he could have held some sort of rabbi position in the Jewish culture. He could have held some kind of superiority being a man at the time. Now let's make him subservient. Let's God's only daughter. Now she's even less important. So who gives a fuck what she has to say? Like, right? Like, and then kind of think like, and then now flash forward, because this is what my brain does, flash forward. What happens if, you know, because it's been, me and Keith talking about, it's been a couple thousand years. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and, you know, we still teach the same grouping of Bible stories. You know, the New Testament, the Old Testament, a couple other, you know, texts here and there. But then we're thinking about like back in the day, you know, there was whole religions that only took the first like 5 books of Moses and was like, these are the teachings, and that was it. They believed God stopped doing miracles. This was all they, you know. And then Jesus came along with a whole new covenant, right? Like, okay, great, but now let's flash forward to this day and age. So now let's give you all your know-how back, right? Let's say that you are a believer in Jesus. You don't have to be, like, just play along, please. Like, let's say you're a believer in Jesus, like, great. You know what I mean? Now, what if God was like, I'm gonna just shock the planet because we're playing what ifs. I sent my only son in a time when men rule. You know, we're kind of in this feminine uprising, whatever you want to call it. You know, women are having their equal voices, you know, whatever, to a certain degree. And it's just like, okay, great. What happens if God was like, kaboom, and sent his only, you know, daughter here with like a whole refresher on a covenant? And what if she was legit? What if she did miracles? What if she had the same upbringing as Jesus, right? The whole thing, the whole shindig. Had a crew of 12 followers. That was it. You know what I mean? Doing miracles, preaching to people. Would you be able to be like, I can't say that. Would you be able to be like, my homie, like, my homie, let's do this? Or would you be like, no, and turn it away because it's blasphemy, it's evil, it's this, because you've only thinking one way, or you fear the consequences of being wrong? Because that's a lot to deal with, right? That's a lot to deal with. And newsflash, nobody technically said you were correct now. You believe in Jesus. You don't know. I'm not telling you my opinions. I'm not telling you what I believe when I don't believe. I'm just saying we're still kind of running on some hearsay. You might have, like, right? Because, like, no, we can't just go down the street and knock on God's door and be like, boop, 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 right? So it's like there's always that chance. There's always that 1% chance that we could just be way fucking wrong. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the big brain in me knows that that is an option. I understand that the text circulated in a time when that was wild, and it was the most talked about story, and it traveled more than anything else on the planet ever has, and it survived. I understand all of that. But I also understand how the game of telephone works. And I also understand how things change. And I also understand how, like, you know what I mean? Like, I understand all of it. And I know everything else. I just think about it like, when you look at yourself as a person, it's really easy to judge something and be like, I would have done it. But then honestly, put yourself back then and be like, but would I have? Growing up in a strict way, especially if you're a female listening to this. So you had no voice. You were proper T. Your whole purpose was to get married, mend a house, have kids. Like, right? Like, really put it really, really simple. Like, would you have been down, or would you have been like, nope, I can't, because, and then now flash forward, let's say, let's say we're adding new covenants. Boom, God was like, that's it, it's time for a refresher. It's been a couple thousand years, we've strayed from what I was getting at, right? Boom. And drop something new, even if it's just the same thing. Like, we're just gonna give Jesus a facelift, right? Like, same thing. We're going to just remind everybody, boom. And nothing changes. We're not preaching anything different, right? Boom. Would you be able to be like, Linda, my homie? Or would that not have happened? I don't know why I named her Linda, but I did. Like, or would that not have happened? Would you have been like, oh, charlatan, witch, whatever, blasphemy, false prophet? I have all those questions. I have all those questions because how many times, me and you, how many times have we talked about, the people who have spiritual egotism, who are, inflated egos, who are driving off some cuckoo clocks, and there's just shit like that. So you see a lot of that, but it's like, I wonder, because I don't believe that God's miracles have stopped. I don't believe that we don't ever see things we can't explain, or things that we would deem a miracle, or, oh my God, I can't believe, divine in nature. Yeah, defy logic, divine in nature. So it's like, but I'm gonna tell you, I don't see no new books being added. I don't see a whole lot of things being written. So it's just really interesting. Like, I wonder not only what it would take for modern Christianity or religion to be adopting new texts that are like, oh, Brenda from 2021, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll be honest. Like, I wonder what it would take. Like, when did we decide that was enough? That the 78 books or the 83 books or whatever was enough? Like, who made that? And I understand that the Vatican, the governing body of what, I understand that, and each section agrees on a certain amount of books. I'm not stupid in that aspect, but I just mean, like, but are we so like, that's it, that's enough, that's all that God's could ever do, that we're so closed door that we wouldn't be able to be accepting of his new miracles, or of the potential of him being like, there's a couple other things I want to teach.
Miracles, but hold on. And then people are still praying for miracles.
Yeah. But
they're still trying to manifest their best life. They're trying to manifest their way out of something, or pray, or like.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's interesting to me, like, and I get the whole ask and you shall receive, and and the whole, you can't come to the Father but through me, and I get all of that. I understand all of that. Like, but I'm just saying, like, but then why do we think that certain things cannot be in that divine light? You know what I mean? And I just think about that, especially because social media is like some of the worst examples of things. You can find the best kind of people and the worst kind of people at the same place, the same watering hole, So it's just so interesting, even doing what we do, like, thankfully, knock on some wood, we haven't come across anything, really hateful. But I have seen a ton of hate on other people's things on social media, a ton of judgment, a ton of name calling, and just foulness. And I just think about it all the time, and I'm like, what if they were actually touched on the shoulder by spirit, got a calling, got an urge to say or do something, and they did it, And that was your response to it. Because of what you think or what box you put on a limitless being. Like, I need people to hear this.
Yeah.
You put the box on God. God
Yep.
didn't put himself in a box. He's limitless, all powerful, all knowing, omnipresent. And for some reason, you think he's only allowed to do the 10 things he's done already. And then you judge everybody out. Like, I understand discernment. Have your discernment. I'm just thinking like way open-minded of being like, but who said that that's not also from the creator, God, source, spirit, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I just have those questions all the time. Like, and I think about that. And I think that's one of the reasons that I don't judge. One, because it's just really tiring. But
Correct.
two, it just doesn't serve a purpose because it's like, I don't get it. Because what if? They're like, what if? We talk about, like, people talk about this all the time. And I say we as in like the spiritual community. I hear it all the time with, they do it all the time with cancer. Like the cure to cancer, as if we don't have it already. The cure to cancer is going to be in like this, the impoverished child's mind. And if we could just afford schooling, they could, and it's always like that big push, that it's in the most unlikely of people that the biggest things are in. And I just think about that sometimes of being like, so how godly are we? And how have we limited the divine just in general?
Yep.
Because we force ourselves to understand. Yeah, because we force ourselves to understand it from our not only limited scope of a knowledge of it, but like other people's accounts. I think about that all the time. The reason he had 12 disciples was not only 12 completely radical perspectives, but they were all different from each other. Like, and then allowed them all to like write whatever they wanted. Wild to me. And I just wonder how many things are like in the Vatican archives or whatever other scholarly places may hold textual knowledge like that on that scope. That there are like other texts that are just lock and keyed that either could fill in the gaps or make things make more sense or even add something new, but just because
people wouldn't be fighting. But do you know what I'm saying? If we just gave everybody clarity, and I mean that, like, and I'm not saying there's not people out there who do have clarity. Like, there are people who have clarity. But my point is, if we gave everybody everything, there wouldn't be people fighting about shit. There wouldn't be a box because everybody would need the box.
But it's also like, dude, sometimes I wonder, like, because a lot of times they'll say, like, they'll keep texts that are consistent. If 4 texts talk about, the stone being rolled away, well, then that makes sense. And that's a fact because 4 different things and people and mention the same thing happening. Okay, great. But what happens if, like, we'll just put you in there, let's say, boom, you're an apostle for a second, and let's say that while everyone's watching the stone, you're like, who's that motherfucker in the background, right? And you're like, what is going on with that guy in the corner over there? And you're like jotting down the shit that people aren't jotting down because maybe you pay more attention to detail. Or maybe while they're like, ooh, fancy stone, Jesus is over here doing tap dance or some shit. And you're like, oh, Jesus tap dance after the stone was rolled away. Like, and you just have all this random shit that other people aren't picking up on. It doesn't mean it's any less important, but because nobody else is picking up on it, it's just be like, we can't corroborate it, right? Because it's so old, we don't know what's going on, blah, blah. So they would just decide not to include it. But what happens if what you had was like an important key whatever? And I just think about that all the time of like, what are we missing? Even when it comes to esoteric knowledge, like, great, like, take it out of the Bible. If the Bible offends you, I'm sorry. Take it out of the Bible. It's my roots. I grew up Roman Catholic. I can't zap it away from myself, right? But it's just like, let's put it in esoteric knowledge. Put it in the Cabal. Put it wherever you want to. Starseed this and sacred geometry. Like, what if we're just missing the small things that make everything like, oh, shit, And I just think about that. Like, how many things are passed or shared because so many people jump on that bandwagon. Like, oh, But what about the bandwagons that are like empty? You know, the people aren't really jumping on, but they actually make a shit ton of sense and they're just not as popular, but they hold a lot of good shit.
But that's
I
it,
think about that
because
all the time.
people are so busy judging everybody else through their lens, through their box, through their construct, because you know what I mean? Because that's their belief. Your belief is borrowed. And I'm going to tell you this. People don't like this. If you have changed your belief, and there's nothing wrong with that, then you have proven to yourself that beliefs are borrowed. You've proven that to yourself. If you've swapped a belief for another belief that is similar yet slightly different, you have proven to yourself that your belief was borrowed. Not good, not bad, not right, not wrong, but that what someone handed to you and you willingly took without question at some point didn't feel right, and you put it down. You said, this ain't it. Maybe it's this. And you explored something else, right? And maybe you've done that over and over and over again, because each time something just didn't feel right. But if we're all pieces of a whole, right? We all hold something. That's undeniable. We all hold something. But if you're so busy judging the person next to you, you may miss what they're trying to give you, what you're here to receive from them, what they're here to receive from you. Just a different little lens to look through.
Yeah. And I just think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting. So I hope you enjoyed it. This is just some of our what ifs. And honestly, it's not necessarily to form any solid answer. It's really just to get you thinking and to help you to open your mind up to other ways of looking at things, other lenses, other perspectives, you know, and to have you start to challenge some of the things that you either do, say, believe, and opening up to the idea that you're allowed to ask questions. Even if you don't come to a conclusion, you're still allowed to ask the question. I feel like so many people are afraid to ask the question because they fear that they won't have an answer or they won't be able to find an answer. Asking questions is sometimes just a really fun, easy way of becoming more open-minded and allowing yourself to express, especially through your throat chakra, you know, what you have going on in your inner world. Some of the things that you either wish you had answers to or don't have someone to talk to about things. Because I know a lot of people, especially when they're starting on their journeys, they have so many questions. And they're just random questions, but they're worried that they're going to be silly or sound stupid or, well, what it, you know, it's okay.
Questions, because
Yeah.
that goes hand in hand with discernment. Everybody wants to scream discernment. But if you can't ask questions, even if they're rhetorical, even if they're to yourself, even if you're just challenging your own energy, your own constructs, your own lens, you can't discern without asking questions. You can't discern without asking questions. And they don't have to be questions you say out loud. But you can't discern without asking questions.
Yeah. But I do suggest, especially if you are an overthinker, ask your questions out loud. Even if it's to yourself on a car ride, ask them out loud, because what you're doing is you're getting your throat chakra involved. You're helping to unblock that chakra center, so to speak, by just allowing the flow of energy. But then you're also not keeping things trapped up in your upper dantian. You're not keeping that energy bouncing around like the old school game of Pong in your mind, and then it's laying on your subconscious and it's clouding everything else you have going on, your focus, your attention, and then it starts to hinder, you know, your own thoughts, your own beliefs, you know, how you view the world, how you think. Allow yourself to ask those questions and allow yourself to free your own energy from inside of you to be expressed and vocalized. That is also part of your creativity, is your self-expression and expressing your questions and the things that you don't quite understand. Even if you don't have the answer after expressing them is half the battle. So I hope that this helps. Just if you only walk away with an open mind or some fun giggles from this episode, then seriously, we've done our jobs. because that's all this was supposed to be, is just open-minded conversation and nothing else. So even if you walked away with more questions than answers today, you still understood the assignment.
All right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Spiritual Roundtable with myself, Child of Balance, and Miss Keys of Wisdom 369. And we hope to see you next week for another seat at the roundtable. For anyone else interested in other social medias, the Free Tree of Knowledge, private services, local events, and much more, check out our website, www.childofbalance.com. Until next time, please remember you are to feel your way through everything. Do not stop, do not make yourself smaller, and always continue to be unapologetically and authentically you, because the world needs more of that.